Children of, I want to talk to your manager, parents. What has been your most embarrassing experience? We traveled a lot when we were younger and would skip lines at the airport since we were kids. But now we were all in our early teens and my mom faked having a heart condition to skip the long line to get on the airplane. The flight attendant would have none of it and told us to go back to the end of the line. I still remember the smiles and the looks of everyone there. See, I would say that most people out there are fairly good-willed, but if you try and take advantage of that goodwill, it's probably not going to last long. My mom has been this person regularly throughout my life, but I do have one positive story with it. She and I went to eat at Portillo's when I was a teenager, and we sat in the back of the restaurant, where it was more private so we can eat in peace. About 10 minutes into our meal, two people come into the empty area and sit down 2 tables away from us. Turns out it was a manager and an employee that was getting written up. The manager was being a complete jerk towards the employee, criticizing and belittling him. My mom put her foot down and walked over and started yelling at the manager for being such a jerk. She went on a rant about how rude and wrong it was of him to do this in front of the public, 2 tables away from the customer, and really let him have it. She demanded to know the phone number of the manager above him, and we left after she received it. I was pretty embarrassed at the time, but as I got older, I realized that she was standing up for the employee, and how wrong the manager really was. I'm not 100% sure what she did with that phone number because I lived with my dad, and I had to go home after that meal. Wow, could it actually be? After hundreds of entitled parent stories, we found one that used their powers for good. Right, so my mom when we went shopping, and she dropped a melon on the way out. She then claimed it was bruised and demanded a full refund. When she was refused, she shouted at customer service and demanded the manager. I just sat there with a "kill me now" expression on my face. After, one of the customer service employees gave me a chocolate bar, so 7-year-old me was happy. So I know a lot of businesses will have some sort of thing where it's like if a person is really upset with the service, then just give them something for free in return. And so you might think like, oh, well, if all somebody has to do is complain, why doesn't everyone do that and just collect free stuff all the time? And you start to realize that maybe saving a few dollars is not worth the actual, embarrassment that you have to go through to actually get that. Unless it truly was horrible service. I might be late, but my dad once asked a guy at the Verizon wireless store to give him his own social security number because he asked for my dad's. My dad walked out afterwards with some stranger's social security number on a post-it. I was a silent bystander because I really wanted my first phone. Wait, what? So you're at a phone store and they say, alright, we just need your social security number, and you say, no, I want yours. And the guy just gives it to you? Like, why? My mother did this in restaurants non-stop growing up. She would demand to see the manager because my burger, which I asked for medium, had some pink in it. What is wrong with having some pink on your burger? Even though I always ask for medium rare steak, if they bring it to me and they're like, cut into that, see how it looks, and if not, I'll take it back. I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care that you obviously overcooked this, because I'd rather just start eating now and not have to sit here and wait for you to go make another one. I was with my parents on vacation, and the hotel put charges on the bill by accident. My mom marched to the front desk and demanded to see the manager. There was a long line, but she cut right in front of it. The manager wasn't very helpful, probably because she was rude. So my mom went to all the other customers in line and told them that the hotel was a scam, and they were ripping us off with fake charges. She made a scene. The hotel called the police, and we were escorted off the premises by actual cops. I died inside. Now you really have to wonder, if you're standing in line at a hotel, and some crazy lady cuts into the front of the line, and then just starts flipping out telling you everybody should leave, is that really somebody that you're going to trust and take advice from? About once a month, my dad gets drunk and calls various customer service centers demanding stuff. Once he finally gets off the phone, usually 45 plus minutes later, he spends the next few days telling us all about how he slew the customer service dragon, and boy, people sure don't appreciate their customers nowadays, blah blah blah. No duh, Dad, you're being an a-hole, no one appreciates that. If you've worked for DirecTV customer service anytime since 1996, I apologize on behalf of my dad. You know, I have to wonder because it seems like it was a very common thing, like maybe back in the 50s and the 60s, where customers were seen as very valuable and you didn't want to do anything to lose them. I wonder if that's kind of changed, not just from the change of culture, but also just that there's so many more people out there that if you lose one customer, that it's not as big of a deal. My father consistently returns food to grocery stores when he is unsatisfied with the quality. The worst is when he returned the 2-pound bricks of cheddar cheese because they went moldy before they should have. I don't think I know of any food place that will accept returns on foods. In fact, I'm always throwing the receipt out as I'm walking out the door because it's like, well, this is mine now. Before our thrift store changed policies, she would cut tags to get discounts since the cashiers would basically make up whatever price they thought it would be, on the spot. If they highballed it, she would get a manager involved, and I hated that. Yeah, thrift stores are kind of weird like that, where it's just like, there's no set price on anything. It's kind of just a giant garage sale. And technically, I feel like you should be able to barter on things, except that I'm pretty sure the cashiers there just don't want to get involved. When I was a young child on a long-distance flight, my mother let me and my brother sleep on the floor. For safety reasons, the flight attendants told my mother that we were not allowed to sleep on the floor. She started to argue with the flight attendants, who then turned to the pilots. The pilots threatened to turn the plane around unless we get up from the floor, but she continued to argue. The pilots announced that they were about to turn around because of my mother, so all the passengers got pissed. Eventually she caved in when she had all passengers and flight crew on a Boeing 747 against her. You know, I'm actually kind of surprised just how quick so many flights are to be like, alright, we're just going to turn back around. But it's like, if you're already past halfway there and they're threatening to turn around and go back, then it's like, you're not doing it for the safety of anyone, you're just trying to punish people. So I had this awful, annoying, terrible neighbor who, because I'm a giant sucker, I was kind to. She asked me to come with her to dinner because it was her birthday, and I knew I was the only person on the planet who would go with her. And well, it's her birthday, how could I say no? So she and I went, and we brought our kids, so my girl and her 2 girls. She makes her oldest do her math homework right there at the table. When the child asks for her help, mind you, this is like 3rd grade math, the mom says it's too hard, so I end up helping. The waiter is just fine. He comes by and takes our orders. She is already acting weird, but she's always acting weird, so I didn't think much of it. The waiter comes by again and asks if she need anything. She dismisses him and waves him off and tells him no. Then like 30 seconds later turns to me and is like, "Can you believe how awful the waiter is? He won't even refill my drink." And just goes on about all these issues that literally don't exist. I'm like, he just asked if you need anything. She cuts me off saying, "I'm gonna talk to the manager." Oh geez. She talks to the manager like this is the worst experience she's ever had in the history of her miserable existence. I'm in shock. Her kids have their heads down. Mine is oblivious. The manager gives her like half off the meal. Oh, and the kicker? That's my half, so you only need to pay the rest. Oh gee, thanks. I left a big tip and a note on my receipt telling them the waiter was great and apologizing for the complaints that they were totally not warranted. It was the second most embarrassing restaurant experience of my life. See, how does somebody reach the point where they just have so little shame that they feel like they came out of this ahead? Where they're like, hey, I saved some money, so it was all good. My mom used to run restaurants. My stepfather used to be a chef in high-end restaurants and is the kind of guy who expects to be treated better than he is currently being treated, regardless of whatever the treatment is. They are not fun to go out to eat with. The most embarrassing experience is actually their most embarrassing experience, one where I embarrass them. My wife and I pride ourselves on being a relief table when we go out to eat. Both of us have been servers, and there's always the counterpoint to the difficult table. That's us. Barring horrible service or bad food, we are super easy customers, tip well, and try to have a good time with our server. Furthermore, we just treat people nicely. So you can imagine our disdain when my parents act like they're freaking royalty at a dinner service. My wife and I went out to dinner with them. They were being particularly tough. My mom was acting like she was Gordon Ramsay analyzing the business, critiquing everything down to the amount of bubbles in her seltzer. My stepdad was getting more and more heated over stupid things like the amount of ice in his drink and how the waitress didn't top off his water, that he was barely sipping on, fast enough. It came to a head when my stepfather ordered a steak medium well. It came back medium well, and for some reason he changed his mind that he wanted it medium rare while it was cooking, and they didn't read his mind, so he gave attitude, as did my mom. They jumped really quick to demanding free stuff. I'm an adult, and this may be the first time they realize this. I interrupted in front of the server and said something like, "Really? This is what you're doing? That's what you ordered." I turned to the server and said, "We do not need anything comped." I then pulled out my wallet and handed her my card and said, "This is for the bill. We'll happily wrap up with what we have here. I'm very sorry for their behavior. You're doing great." Then the line that stung them so deep they still bring it up years later. "I was taught to treat people nicely, a lesson that seems to be forgotten. Thank you." They turned red. The server walked away. I looked down and cut my steak and didn't say a word. They were so flabbergasted that the meal was virtually silent, except me asking my stepfather how his steak was a few minutes later. I signed the check, gave a big tip, and we walked out and said goodbyes. They've been nicer to servers each time that we've gone out since. See, sometimes all it really takes to stop somebody from being a horrible person is just for somebody around them to call them out for it. I know it's not always going to work, but if that person feels like they are in the right, they feel like everyone is on their side, but if you just come out and tell them like, hey, you're acting like a child, then they might have to snap out of it. My dad just loved to argue, and he loved a deal. We were shopping in a department store, and I found a pair of pants I was mildly interested in. The pants were tagged at, let's say, $40. and the sign on the rack was, "All pants $25." I was mildly interested. I asked the sales clerk if they had them in my size, and the clerk said, "Those aren't supposed to be on that rack." My dad lost it and insisted on getting the pants for $25, and started asking for a courtesy discount on top of that. Escalated to the floor manager and the store manager. Meanwhile, I didn't want the pants. They were okay pants, I guess, nothing awesome. I just didn't care very much about them. I was more than happy to move on. I told my dad I didn't want the pants. By then, he didn't care about what I wanted. He wanted the pants at the better price. Eventually, after like an hour of arguing, the store manager said, "We're not giving you the pants at that price. Take them or leave them at $40. So we left them, which suited me just fine because I didn't want the pants. So the thing that makes being in a situation like this the most cringeworthy is like all of this fighting over just some pants. Like, they're just pants. Why does everyone have to get so mad about it? One time I was in a record store with my dad. He bought a record that was $19.99. He paid using a 20. The clerk took the money and put it in the register and gave my dad the CD in a plastic bag. I started walking off when I noticed my dad wasn't moving. As I turn around, I hear him say to the record store clerk, "You still have to give me my cent back." The clerk replied that they don't return 1 or 2 cents because they don't accept them and as such, don't have them in the store. My dad replies by saying that is judicially impossible and asks for the manager. To make a long story short, one of the clerks gave my dad a cent from his own wallet. Hey, every penny counts. See, I don't see why they don't just change the price to be 20 even in that case. I mean, here in the United States, it's like it doesn't even matter if it's $19.99 or 20 because it's probably going to be about like $21.50 in the end. I don't like going to restaurants with her. She thinks that because she worked as a waitress for a year 35 years ago, it gives her the right to act like a complete a-hole to them. She also thinks not tipping them will encourage them to get their act together. Joke's on you, Mom. I always find our server after seated, give them a 20, and apologize in advance for your poor behavior. Like, okay, I get that it's nice that you are making it up to the server for being treated badly, but is it really your responsibility to be paying for all of your parents' problems? I worked at Best Buy. I stopped in with my mom one day because she wanted to buy me the Star Wars DVD box set for my birthday. I had a huge crush on the girl that was working the customer service counter. Well, the DVD set rang up $10 more than it was priced. And my mom deliberately didn't say anything until after the transaction, so she could claim the effing $5 Michigan scan law bounty. My crush didn't know how to process it, and the manager was busy, so my mom tore into her about how it was her job and how she should understand how to do things. At my job. To a girl I liked. My life was misery for a while afterwards. Yeah, it's a bit hard to pick up a girl who already knows that you come from a crazy family. It gets a little bit difficult to bring them home after that. So at any fast food drive-thru, a worker will say, "Ma'am, can you please drive forward a little bit while your food finishes up?" My mom just folds her arms and says no. I mean, I totally understand why they do it. Sometimes the thing you ordered needs time to be made while the things people behind you ordered are already ready. And it kind of sucks when you just have to like sit there while people just basically get their food and pass by you. My mom asked me to call her a taxi via an app. She ended up calling me multiple times, complaining about how the driver didn't use the route she thought was best. She never owned a car and doesn't know how to drive, even though the guy just used the best possible route the navigator suggested. She ended up getting out halfway and using Subway. The driver proceeded to call me in tears, completely shocked, unsure of what he did so wrong, and apologizing. I felt like total crap. I never called her a cab again. I mean, does she think that you personally gave him instructions on exactly what he was supposed to do when he picked her up? Like, on the bright side, people like this usually just get banned from every service and then they just don't get to work with anybody. Not my parents, but my grandparents. When I was around 10 years old, my grandmother went out and got me and my brother McDonald's. We got home and we didn't have napkins in the bag. So, big deal, right? We have paper towels and napkins in the house. Also, me and my brother are pretty good with not making any messes while we eat. Nope, grandmother got us in the car, drove back to McDonald's, demanded a manager, and screeched about how upset she was that we didn't get any napkins. I wanted to just melt into the floor and disappear. It's just napkins, Nanny. Yeah, and if you're really picky about getting exactly what you want out of an order, fast food is probably not the place for you. My mother-in-law is truly a Karen. Going out to eat with her is always a nightmare. Her orders have 14 special requests, but she's not at all kind about it. She is defensive from the get-go, like you're an idiot who's always screwed up the order. No dressing, not on the side, nothing. Completely dry. Do you understand? I will send it back. The one I'll never forget, though, was a dinner at Joe's Crab Shack. In case you've never been, it's one of those places that every so often plays a song that the entire staff is required to drop everything and do a little synchronized dance to. It's quick, everyone gets a little kick out of it, it's part of the fun. Now, my mother-in-law Karen knew this. It's not like she'd never been there, but apparently she was not willing to wait 2 extra minutes for her dry salad, so she starts going off as soon as the dancing starts. She gets a manager, who clearly knows Karen well, and offers a quick apology for doing their job, a discount, and her dry salad. But Karen's not completely satisfied. She tells us that even though dinner for our party of 8 is on her, she's not tipping the waitress 1 penny. She proceeds to complain, loudly, the rest of the meal and antagonize our waitress over petty stuff. I worked too many years in customer service, and you know, I'm a decent human being. I made sure to get my bill separate so I could tip her for the entire table. I wrote a quick note on the receipt, something along the lines of, "Way to stay positive, even when the customer's a jerk." I was a little afraid of the wrath of Karen. It was one of my finest interactions with her too, but when the waitress came and hugged me, Karen and I locked eyes. She knew. I didn't care. Don't be a jerk, Karen. You know, I guess a lot of these stories are kind of a lesson to a lot of waiters too, because it's like, okay, just because one person's being a complete jerk, like still try to keep up a good act because the other people on the table might make it up. My dad, he can be such a prick if you get his order wrong. It could be fast food or a nice sit-down restaurant. He often yells at waitstaff if they undercook his steak. It has to be well done or he claims to have lost his appetite. One time we went to Burger King when I was younger and we sat down to eat. He took 1 bite of his burger, spit it out, and immediately started complaining about it being undercooked. He cut in front of everyone in line to yell at the cashier. Then he asked who was the cook. When the cook appeared, he launched his burger, hitting the poor kid directly in the face with the lidless burger. He's now banned for life from Burger King. You know, I've always wondered, how do they enforce bans at places like this? I mean, maybe it's just so rare that someone gets banned that just everyone who works there knows exactly who he is and just tells him to leave as soon as he walks in. But I feel like that'd be kind of hard to keep up with when you've got so many employees coming and going. A grocery store had this sign up that said if an item rang up higher than advertised price, it was free. It was the 80s, and stores did stupid crap like this that I never see in stores today. My mom was buying a box of Little Debbie cakes that rang up for $2.85 instead of the advertised $2.50. So now mom wants her free cakes. Cashier doesn't know what to do, summons the manager. The manager tells her to ring up the sale anyway, and he'll be right back. He comes back and hands my mother 35 cents cheerfully and says, "There you go." My mother points out the sign behind him, and he says, "Oh, the last manager put that up. It doesn't make any sense. I'm the new manager, and I just haven't had the sign removed yet." It was a printed plastic sign that was screwed into the wall. My mom insists they honor their sign. He says nah. Now, up to this point, I, as an adult looking back, am totally on board with my mom's actions. My mom gathers her things, decides against taking the Little Debbies on principle, and we get in the car. Mom wordlessly drives downtown to the main store of this 3 to 5 store chain, knowing the office is next door. We walk into this perfectly 80s wood-paneled office where my mother asks the secretary to speak to the owner of the store, and is permitted to do so since this is a family-owned business, and their corporate office is smaller than the row of cubicles my staff occupy at work. Here my mother unleashes a tirade about how she has lost faith in this brand and how his word is meaningless, since they will not honor the sign. The guy stands up, profusely apologizes, validates her anger, and then pulls out of his wallet and hands her a $5 bill, along with a promise that he will speak to the manager, and the sign will either be honored or removed. We got home and find that the ice cream we bought melted in the trunk because summer, and ruined the cereal and the bread. Well, I hope it was worth it after all of that. But yeah, it does seem kind of weird that any store would try some sort of marketing gimmick like that, and it makes sense why it didn't last long. My dad would sometimes do this at restaurants if the server was too slow or the food was wrong, especially multiple times in the same meal. He was totally right in being frustrated because sometimes this was extreme, but we all hated it. The worst time was when we were in our favorite restaurant. My mom literally says, "I'm not doing this," and gathered up us 3 kids and we went to the car. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed a little taste of those old entitled parents stories. Sometimes they do slip in here, even though we only do Ask Reddit now. But that's all for today. Hope you have a nice Thanksgiving.